Live and direct! Live and direct! It is now, people! Here it is. 1, 2.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com. You know by now we like magic. And Halloween may have been last week, but for my money, it's the scariest day of the year. Today is the election here in the States. Hope this video cheers you up, because if you're like 42% or so of the American electorate right now, even if your candidate wins, you're probably not going to be that happy about it. And if your candidate loses, again, doesn't matter who you voted for, if your candidate loses, then you're probably going to be under a desk awaiting the apocalypse. So if you have Wi-Fi under there, I hope you're seeing this right now. Here's a deck. Let's start with the creatures. We're playing 17 of them in this LifeGain deck. There's actually a bunch of creatures in this standard that can gain us life pretty effectively. And a few of them I didn't even use. Sometimes, some for budgetary reasons, But let's go ahead and launch into what I did use here. We're going to start with 4 whole copies of Jedi Offshoot in the deck. Just kind of a no-brainer in a way. If we play this early game, then it's a great blocker against almost all of the aggro decks in the format. Doesn't do great against Toolcraft Exemplar, but whatever. Like it blocks everything else pretty favorably, gains us life, and if we get multiple copies of them out, it's really good. Plus, we're playing Evolving Wilds, so sometimes we'll gain 2 life in one turn. If we have multiples, we gain a bunch of life off of one Evolving Wild. So, yes, so Jedi Offshoot gains us a bunch of life, good blocker, action early, all day this. Moving on, we're going to play 4 copies of Lone Rider. Whole reason to play the deck. I should have put one of those, like, yay sound effects over it as soon as I said Lone Rider. I know a lot of people really like this card, myself included. I played it in the Odric deck a couple of months ago, and I'm blown away by how good this card is when you can actually get it to transform. And in this deck, we've got tons of ways to get this thing to transform on turn 3, like super easily. So Lone Rider, awesome. No reason not to put it in the deck. I mean, 3 abilities on a 4/4 creature on turn 3 is really good initiative. We are on board. So, yeah, I don't even have to go into it too much. We're definitely playing for Lone Rider, one of the best cards in the deck. We're going to play 3 copies of Aire Eternal Pilgrim, a key card in the deck just like Lone Rider, and another no-brainer. We get to above 30 life, we just start blowing stuff away. And we're trying to get to 40 life for Felidar Sovereign anyway, so 30 life is on the way. Might as well play Aire. I mean, she's got really good stats too. I mean, 2 mana, 2/3, Death Touch, that's good by itself. So I'm playing Aire definitely, and I want to draw her a lot. We don't have a whole lot of card advantage, so even though she's a legend, I'll play all 3 copies of her here. We're going to play 4 copies of Arborback Stomper. This card is good. This card is really, really good. Like, it kind of reminds me of Thragtusk in a way. I really wish that it left behind a creature when it died. That'd be sweet. But 5 mana for a 5 power thing with trample, and it gains us a whole 5 life. That's a quarter of our life total, our starting life total. So that's just so good. Like, if you get to turn 5 and you can drop a Stomper against aggro, suddenly you've got this huge creature that they're going to have a hard time attacking into, and you just gain back a lot of the damage that they've done to you, like a whole attack step in the early game worth of damage. So Stomper is so awesome, and I was playing 3 of them to begin with, but I added the playset in because this card is really, like, this card could be rare maybe. Like, I like seeing this card every time I see it. It can also just in the game, like, this is a threat. This is definitely a win condition on certain boards, Not only are we playing Aile, but we're playing like 12 other pieces of removal along with Aile, so we can keep the board relatively clean and just stomp in, literally, with an Arborback and win. Just a lot of good things about this card. Like, try it. If you haven't played with this card yet, like, it's really good. Like, we've all played with it, or most of us have played with it in Limited, and we've all been impressed with it there. It turns out that in a budget deck, it translates very well. Card's fine. Finish off the creatures here. We're going to play 2 copies of Felidar Sovereign in the main deck. You knew it was here, and I keep referencing it. I'd like to play 3 copies, but I feel like if we did that, we'd have to play 26 lands, and I want to keep it at 25. I don't want to open up 2 slots, one for another land, one for another Sovereign. So I think this is right. I mean, we've got until turn 6 to draw the card, and sometimes turn 7 or 8, however long it takes to get to 6 lands. So that being said, I think we've got plenty of time to find it. 2's all I think we need to play, and we can win other ways too. So obviously Felidar Sovereign, an important card, and is a big meaty creature. When you put it out on the battlefield, helps itself get to that 40 life, watermark. So I like a lot about the card. I just don't think that we have to play a bunch of copies of it. I think 2 is fine. There are 18 non-creature spells in the deck. That's kind of a lot, and most of them are dedicated to gaining life. And a sub-portion of that is dedicated to getting Lone Rider to transform on turn 3. Let me show you those right now. We're playing 4 copies of Blessed Alliance and 4 copies of Essence Extraction right here. And at first I was playing Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. I have moved that into the board along with Die Young. This deck is a little bit different than it started off looking like. But these two are mostly just trying to make sure that we can flip over that Lone Rider on turn 3. And Essence Extraction is pretty good too, in that we can blow away a creature, transform the Lone Rider. That's pretty awesome. And Blessed Alliance, if we can get to 4 mana, that can blow away a creature during combat and gain us 4 life and transform the Lone Rider. So like, that's awesome too. Just both of these are great cards that can function as removal and life gain. And Blessed Alliance can sometimes surprise untap a couple of creatures, which is always a better option than it appears to be. You know, during their combat step, that is fantastic. So definitely play both of these. Essence Extraction, great removal right now against all the aggro decks. And Alliance can either gain you the life, kill a creature, do both, or it can, you know, surprise them during combat. Lots of options on Alliance. So these aren't just for transforming Lone Rider, but they go a long way towards that. While we're talking about removal, let's finish talking about removal. We're going to play 2 copies of Stasis Snare and 2 copies of Fumigate in the deck. Stasis Snare is just pure removal that can take out any creature at any time, including Emrakul. All of that's very good. I want some unconditional removal in the deck. Stasis Snare does that really, really well. As far as Fumigate goes, I think that's also something that we kind of have to play. Even though we're playing 17 creatures, we can always play smart, wait until we hit the Fumigate, and then start developing our board. Or other times even, you might want to gain a couple of extra points of life off the Fumigate. That has happened a few times where I'm like, okay, you know, Jedi Offshoot, get to turn 5, go ahead and Fumigate. I gain 2 extra life off the Offshoot and like 4 life off of your guys. So Fumigate can get you into a great position where you can, you know, Fumigate into Felidar Sovereign or something like that. Fumigate into an Arborback Stomper is also good. So, love Fumigate. I don't want to play a bunch of copies because we're also playing a fair amount of creatures. But against these decks that develop big boards, sometimes this can gain you like 7 life. It's happened. And that's really good, especially considering it also resets the board. It's everything this deck wants. Speaking of gaining life, I'm just going to slip 1 copy of Providence into the deck, you know. Providence, it's not always amazing. Now, you draw it in your opening hand, it's obviously really, really good. And, you know, that's only happened to me once in testing, but when it does happen, it's great. And against other decks, you know, either against aggro or even mid-range decks that put you in a bad position a little bit later on in the game, you can play your Providence. It's always great to top deck this when you're looking for something, because I've been at 12 and top deck this, and that is awesome. So, you know, not only because it's great to top deck, but we don't want to see it all the time, I'm going to play just the 1 of. So, and also, you know, I don't want to play 4 of, even though if we do have it in our opening hand, it's awesome. But I still don't think it's important enough to play a bunch of copies. I think 1 is about right. Now, we also need a plan for the long game once all of our life gain sort of draws up. We're out of spells, we're out of creatures. So I've got a couple of things that can get things back from our graveyard. Starting with a 4 of Pulse of Murasa, but also including a 1 of Wildest Dreams here. Wildest Dreams I'll play because it can get non-creature, non-land cards out of the graveyard. That's pretty important. But I think that we can just play the Silver Bullet copy and be fine because we're already playing a playset of Pulse. Pulse is what went in when Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot came out. I find Pulse to just be a little bit better, gives us a lot of long game. We can get a Stomper back and gain 6 life, which if you're doing the math is 11 life and a 5 power body. So that is awesome. It can also get, you know, Felidar Sovereign back if they manage to kill it, Aire if they kill it, you know, lots of good things, Lone Rider if they kill it. So Pulse is just so good against like aggro decks. We can freely block in the early game, and then turn 4/5, play that Pulse, play the creature again, gain 6 life, and have a creature back on the board. So Pulse is just unbelievable. I'm definitely going to play it. It also gets us a pretty long way towards that 40 life we want to get to. Wildest Dreams, on the other hand, I'll play specifically so we can get Fumigate back, we can get Blessed Alliance back, Essence Extraction, a lot of things that we want to get back that aren't creatures or lands. So at least the 1 of Wildest Dreams I think is good. And I have played this, by the way, for 7 mana and gotten 3 cards back. That's good. That is extremely good card advantage, and you get to get whatever you want back from your graveyard. So don't count out Wildest Dreams. I don't think this card is horrible, especially in this deck where we're gaining a bunch of life and we're going to get into the long game. Even if we're playing against aggro, we will very likely go to the longer-ish game. So we have a much better chance of playing this for 5 or 7 and getting a bunch of card advantage off of it. 25 lands in the deck, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, we're playing all of the uncommon tap lands that are available to us in these colors, and we're also playing Evolving Wilds, not only for Jedi Offshoot, but also to fix our mana whenever needed. So pretty, you know, stock mana base here. You can build a 3-color mana base in this format for very, very cheap, but if you had a couple of bucks, I would probably suggest starting here, or with adding like Gisela or Kaladesh. Those would also be great ads in this deck. But if you want the mana base to not be so shaky and you can more easily get the Jedi Offshoot on turn 1, I would suggest fixing up the mana base before you do anything else. And here's the sideboard right here for you. A lot of this is fairly self-explanatory, and I'd like to be covered a little bit more against control decks, but mostly we're trying to get rid of aggro in the early game. You know, we've got Immolating Glare against small creatures and Smuggler's Copter. Quarantine Field is in there against control, but also works against aggro. It's mostly in there, though, against planeswalkers like Gideon, Liliana, and the like. Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot and Die Young will go in against aggro. If you can find the room for them, you might not always want to take anything out. It depends on how Game 1 went against aggro, but sometimes I'll take out a Blessed Alliance, or 2 even, and maybe 1 Pulse of Marassa in the Wildest Dreams, and just put in sort of this suite here. Appetite for the Unnatural is just super obvious. It's in sideboards even without LifeGain themes. And then Kambal is also in there against control decks that want to remove our creatures. Here are your power rankings right here. Final score of 59, which is pretty good for a deck. That's going to cost you about $20 for the main and $5 for the side or so. So about 25 bucks, you get the total package, and you can actually do a fair amount of work. This deck does pretty good stuff against all the aggro in the format. Against control, it's a little bit wonkier, but we have good sideboard options in both Quarantine Field and Kambal. So we've got decent game. We can get into the long game against a lot of stuff, which is where we're a little bit more comfortable. And then we can start recycling cards with Pulse of Marassa, Wildest Dreams, you know. We can just win the game off of Felidar Sovereign. We can start blowing stuff away with Ailey, but we have to get the right start in order to live out those pipe dreams. You know, if we get a slow start in this deck, we're in a little bit of trouble, which is, by the way, why I want you to upgrade the mana base first. We've got a lot of tap lands here. 16 cards are either lands that come into play tapped or the 4 Evolving Wilds that make lands come into play tapped. So upgrade that mana base so that we can get a little bit of a faster start, get on board, play that Jedi Offshoot turn 1 more reliably. I think that's very, very important, and that's actually why the consistency is an 8 and not a 9, is the mana base needs to be upgraded in this deck. But aside from that, the deck does have a lot of very good play against a surprising amount of decks, because we don't play too much removal, we don't play too many creatures, and some decks, decks that play too much removal, for instance, can go up against other control decks, and it's just a bunch of dead, boring cards in your hand and a long slog of a game. You can't do anything. But in this deck, we're playing both removal and creatures, and ways to recur our creatures, Pulse of Marassa, Wildest Dreams. So we've got a lot of good options in this deck, no matter what we're playing against, just because of the way it's built. But for now, I'm tapped out. That's about all I got. If you enjoyed the content, like the content, you've heard the spiel, just hit the thumbs up. Every YouTuber does it. I don't like to go into the spiel. Just please hit thumbs up. It helps. And then sub if you're new, or if you just haven't done it yet. You've been watching my channel for like a month and you haven't subscribed, just come on, man, subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards, and good luck.